Legs.
Legs.
My girlfriend.
The robot named Legs. Oh my gosh. Alright. Welcome everyone, Antiford and friends, esteemed guests. So, this is a summary of the decade of stories on the Antiford site. Unfortunately, there's a couple stories that I would love to resurrect from the old form that don't exist. Okay, so, and then I'm going to be summarizing a bit more than the real-time decade because we've never really summarized this before, so perfect. So, a century of stories, and the characters in them as of now-ish, January 2020. Let's do the numbers. So there's about 19 very active versus 23 active citizens. Part of this is based on how active you are on the site, more or less. So that's all a wash. So about 40 people have really done something interesting with the Antiford group and site. There's 236 encyclopedia articles, like 225 stories, a whole bunch of blogs, and a handful of comics and art. A lot of art was posted to social media instead of the site. Hopefully we'll get some of that to change. I've resurrected some stuff that was posted to the site and was lost because I found them on Facebook. So I recovered them from the, what's the upload site? Imgur. From the Imgur reclamations of these things because 6 months and your art's reclaimed.
Or photo bucket.
Yeah.
Which is where Eric put all his stuff.
Yeah, so some of Eric's stuff I was able to reclaim, etc. More numbers. There's at least 6 dead significant others among our characters. We like to fridge, apparently. There's at least 7 secret societies? That surprised me. I thought there was a little
7?
There's about 7 secret societies if you go through and really think about it and count it. We can talk later, but there's about 30 people who are humans and about 9 characters who are non-human. That's Vibrani, Nikalo, Yeti, Robot, one of them, and one of them might be just like, like Squigglebottom or Captain Fox, right? Not human, they're pets. Accounts. About 25 are in Antiford. Of the active 40, right? About 25 of them are Antifordians and 14 of them are from other countries, which is cool. There's been 11 writing challenges, which has been awesome. The writing challenges, the flash fiction challenges, etc., those have really pushed us because that's been a fun, accessible, communal way of doing writing. And we need to do more stuff like that because that's great. Not just that, those are good and we should do more of them, but more things like that. There's been about 7 other types of challenges, reading and art. That's been great, like the multimedia challenge, the Antiford art challenge, and the many reading challenges. Thank you, Jasmine, for putting those together. And listing out stories people should really read based on a theme. And there's been about 13 times when people have really collaborated, have their characters and the stories together. All rough estimates. So, to remind everybody the rule of canon, if it's not declared as canon, it's not uncanon. Like, there's things that you clearly say, yeah, this isn't canon. Like my Halloween story, that didn't happen. There's things we clearly label as canon, yes, this definitely happened in this exact way. Great. The stuff in the middle gray area, it's canon in my heart. No, really it happened, but maybe the details are slightly different because we haven't gone through a process of working together to make sure it's got label-worthy canon details. So that's just reminding everybody there. Again, don't forget all of our multimedia, our games, the big one being Wilder Raz, and we have some in-character YouTube video stuff. Do check them out, they're fantastic. And while a lot of them don't really tell much, some of these don't tell too much of a story, this one definitely does tell plenty of story. kind of that gray semi-canon area a lot of times, but so worth checking out. So, of the people, gonna go over many, many different characters. Some honorable mentions that are worth checking out, but wasn't worth me summarizing because there's not a lot of stories, or they're very, very new, that sort of thing, or they don't tie into the overall narrative of the rest of the world so much. So, Bert von Wall, a purple tribe of Veroni, assassin and tea merchant, cool, interesting character. Maya, very interesting Gearford resident who, she's wings. Professor Leopold Philip Featherstone, or however you pronounce that, he's into, like, Vibrani welfare, which is an interesting thing. He hasn't told too much of a story there, but there's interesting stuff where it is. Jameson Skyfell, mayor of a town out by Conwell, the mayor of Denbolt. We've got Olivia Annette Adams, who is technically related to the royal family that was murdered in the Antiford Revolution. She's a mill. She owns a mill. She owns textile mills. Eli Ogreg. He's a coffee purveyor in Aston Junction. Really cool guy. Dainty Fuel, a mechanic out in the desert, I think kind of outside Gearford, with an interesting disease. Sean Finian O'Brudder here. I'm bad at pronouncing some things. Yeah, so Sean had he has a few stories that are really cool, and they all seem to have a recipe in them. Really unique. Love it. And then we have Captain Horatio Morlock, which fun, interesting stories. Very swashbuckling, very world grand adventures. Still seeing where that goes with the journey to find all the lenses. So check it out. Absolutely, all of the people here. So that I've not covered the timeline.
Swift, definitely the new Leo Swift.
So that I've not covered the timeline does not mean they're not important. Oh, and we have some comedy accounts that are worth checking out just for a laugh. We've got the old classics, Franklin von Squigglebottom, a pet land squid that belongs on the crew of the Gazelle. I'll get to their story a little later, but all of his posts are just the word squeak. There's a story, there's a choose your own adventure, there's poetry that's just squeak, squeak, squeak. Earl Robin Ronalds, I believe, wrote the king up in Titania, King of the Squirrels, or crazy man, crazy person.
Well,
Something I don't remember. Konnichiwa-chan, a few of our members trolling us in the most hilarious way possible. And Frederick Businessman. I would describe Frederick Businessman as 3 hat tips in a business suit. It is just the joke synergy corporate speech character, and I love it. And the graphs were great. And
very necessary.
And as you know, comedy is not limited to accounts. All of our members like to do hilarious things. The Color of Her Feast, an Antiford Harlequin novel. The 2 fantastical bacon swords. Some of the trying too hard to make memes that we had for a while. Those are all great.
Oh, I forgot about the drinking review. That was
Yeah. So that was all the Facebook jokery, and this was all the Discord jokery. I finally have time to read a Nate story. Hat tip. Yeah. And the D&D campaign. Oh my god. Legs.
My girlfriend.
The robot named Legs. Oh my gosh. So, what's happened? What's happened in world? Some of you may have only read the book or know nothing. So, a little broadly speaking, early on, 1650s to 1800-ish, they rediscovered the Library of Demetrius, which is kind of our version of the Library of Alexandria. It's just this source of knowledge that, yeah, people rediscovered some of these things since the library was lost, but rediscovering it in its entirety was a huge boon to technology and knowledge in the world. This rediscovery of the library is what really makes our world steampunk. is discovering all this technology all of a sudden and just having this huge mass of innovation and interesting technological development. Around the same time, that was happening over in the small continent called Peor, kind of like our Europe or Eurasia, but tiny. Over in the west, on the continent of Araz, we have the founding of the three major countries over there: Antiford, the Prussian Empire, which would eventually be more than, and Titania. So much time happens, and there's some bits that fill in the gaps in some people's stories. Much later, we have the Prodigious War, the war between Antiford and the Prussian Empire. They're fighting over the Prodigious Canyon. Who has the rights? Who owns the majority of the land that borders the two? Because there's a big river in the canyon. Water is kind of a nice resource to have, so they fight over it. The war destabilizes both countries. Both go through revolutions. Both have elements of natural revolution versus manufactured money happenings. There's a lot of interesting, crazy intrigue going on in both countries' revolutions. But they both basically collapse. The war ends because they internally are falling apart. So, much later, a little bit more stability later, about 10 years later, one of the technocrats, the people who, after the revolution in Antiford, now run the country, the technocrats have one of their secret leadership people assassinated Charles Button. A little bit later, the Prussian War of Reclamation happens. This is the emperor whose family ruled their country for hundreds of years. They were kicked out in their revolution, and he gets supporters to fight and reclaim his right as emperor. Big giant war, a lot of people involved, very fun. Well, in a writing sense. Obviously war is but and then in 1897, Antiford decides to make one of their secret council a known entity for the first time. We have a Prime Minister Mordecai Marigold. So that's the big... So, here's the character, Emperor von Kresser. Yes, it is a writer, it is not just an in-fiction only entity. So yeah, his family ruled the country from their foundings in 1660s. During the 1820s, they had a big war with the Orange Vibrani tribe, so native people who lived there that were pushed out, they pushed back. So they had this huge war with the Orange tribe. The Orange tribe was a lot more warlike, ready to fight, and the Prussians were brutal. And that gave the von Kresser family the nickname of the Butchers. In the 1840s, sometime after that, there was a split in some of the upper craft of Prussian society where the Techno-Prush moved southerly towards what's now known as Mercy and Prushland, and there's kind of more of an aristocracy in the northern Prushlands. So, cut many years later to 1879. Our young von Kresser here, Diederik, he is there day one in the war. He grabs his land ship, and he just starts fighting. And the war technically ends, but he doesn't stop fighting. He ends up, basically, he's way off westward when the revolution happens and basically overthrows his family, and so he's trying to figure out what the heck happened. There's a lot of secret plot. Basically, the aristocrats were putting money down and supporting the overthrowers in exchange for positions of power in the new regime. So he's out for blood to get his land back from these people who basically bought their way into power in his country. So yeah, and he goes through a lot of different campaigns. He fights a part mechanical Count Friedrich. He ends up fighting with the land ship Scorpios at one point. A lot of crazy stuff going on. He meets a war Chanka. Chankas are these little like bovine gerbil creatures, while in Prussia, I guess they bred them to rideable size. And it's got armor. It's a golden-plated armored Chonka named Nate the Chonka. Fun stuff. Fun stuff. And then there's a lot of time gap. Basically, in the 1890s, he has his War of Reclamation, reclaiming the country. And in 1897, the war ends. He's emperor again. So, recommended story: his fight versus Count Friedrich. This is not the title of the story. It is his 4 choose your own adventure story, or adventures of your own choice. We call them adventure stories on the site. So he has 4 adventure stories, interactive fictions. So go ahead and definitely read them. They're fantastic. They're hilarious. Remember your choices between the different parts. He'll have you recall, oh, did you choose A or B in the last, or did you choose to fight this guy or stab this guy in the last story? And then you say which one you did in the last story, and the new story continues from there. Lots of fun. He gets his new land ship, he gets some new crew, a whole bunch of interesting fun stuff happens. So that is basically what I have to say about Dietrich von Kresser. Other than his War of Reclamation is in great part, we did this as a real world series of games. The battles happened in real life, and the outcomes of these games were then written into the story, into the narrative of the world. So, crazy, crazy stuff. At some point, Buford Automaton signs a deal with the Emperor to supply them with robot technology for fighting war. And, Buford Automaton was paid accordingly. Captain Swift ends up being one of the leads of their Air Force in the fight down there. So, crazy stuff. So now we have Phineas Cromwell. Commodore Phineas Cromwell. So he was born to a poor family, humble beginnings. He was discovered as being very, very smart, engineering-wise. So he was drafted basically into the Royal Academy, where he would live on premises. Didn't get to see his family a lot. He did very well. He married a wonderful young lady named Elizabeth. They got a small house inside the nicer part of the city. He became the lead engineer of Public Works for a little while. Things were going well for Phineas. And then he invented TNT. And then there was a horrible accident, which is what happens when you invent TNT. And he lost his wife and unborn child in an explosion. And that messed him up a bit. And so when the military came in knocking and said, hey, we've got a war going on, the prodigious war between Antiford and Prussia, they said, we want this explosive technology. And he was like, no. No. Very much analogous to the real world inventor of TNT. Not wanting things to be done with it for war. So they sent him out to Pleasantville, to the middle of the Astoki Desert, to the place you don't want to get sent to, and they don't have fences, because there's no need for fences, because there's enough desert between Pleasantville and anything else.
It's Camp Green It's Camp Green Lake for Hills.
Camp Green Lake for Hills.
Holes.
Yeah, Camp Green Lake for Hills.
Holes?
Yes, holes. Good reference. So in Pleasantville, he meets who would be one of his oldest friends, Boric. A half Vibrani, half Titanian, half Yeti, Titanian gentleman. And they would survive a goblin raid on Pleasantville, and they would leave. Correction, please.
Yeah. So first, it's not Pleasantville. It's the other one that was just outright destroyed. It doesn't actually have a name.
Gotcha.
2, Boric came in after the goblin attack and found him huddled in a well.
Perfect. Okay, well, that doesn't say order. Anyway, so eventually Phineas would make it back to civilization, make it back to Gearford, which then was known as Uptillicus. Actually, no, it was known as Uptillicus when he was living there before. I think the war would have ended by then. But anyway, he made his...
I think it was before.
Yeah, he made his way back to Gearford. Either way, he joined secret society, the Brotherhood of Demetrius, which is one of the oldest, longest-running secret societies that has great ties to the Library of Demetrius. He would win the North Star in a game of cards, and with Boric, they would fix up that ship, make it fly, get a crew, get some other captains interested in partnering with them, and that sort of thing, where that's how he becomes a Commodore. He would join a second secret society, known as the Order of the Badger, which is an Antifordian secret society, basically keeping a close eye on this new technocracy government and seeing if it's necessary or possible to overthrow them if need be, because they're bad actors. Basically, protect the country from itself. Now, in 1893, Phineas, like many people we'll see, got involved in the Charles Button incident. His role was that he was the one who shot down Charles Button's ship and rescued the man who would murder Charles Button. That's the simplification and probably the way the technocrats would like to describe it. Now, he would go on, and from that incident, through some leads, he would go out to Barrow Camp, find the technocrats building giant warships. Chaos ensued, and the North Star would be destroyed. He would spend a good year rebuilding the North Star to its former glory, and he would do some more work for the Brotherhood. They were investigating some mechanical experiments being done on some poor Vibrani individuals using Buford technology, which is likely due to certain events involved in the Charles Button incident. And in 1897, when the Prime Minister was announced, Phineas knew who that guy was, because Phineas went to school with Marigold. So that's an interesting turn of events. He knows exactly what kind of actor this guy is. I would recommend A New Mission to read. It's the one where Phineas is tasked with investigating this horrible thing. He would have to work with Buford. It shows his involvement with the Brotherhood of Demetrius. You get a lot more slice of life with Phineas working hard into the night on things on his ship. You would get his relationship with Boric. There's a lot of great stuff in there to figure out. If you want to know who Phineas is, this is what I would recommend. So then we have the mysterious ABC, Miss Abigail Beatrix Cormax. So she grew up outside Gearford, or the edges of Gearford, in the tinker community, and these folks, they went out into the desert and they would trade with the Vibrani, the Pavastani tribe who would live out there, trade for trinkets, this and that. There wasn't a lot of money coming in to the sort of tinker community outside of Gearford, or just at the edge of Gearford. So oftentimes they would resort to stagecoach robbery, basically. They would rob. And one day they robbed the wrong person. Like, the worst person to rob. They would be the prince at the time. So this was back before the technocracy took place. So this was horrible. A lot of people got killed. Abigail fled and ended up in a cave and met the Bear Witch, a well traveler. The wells of Well Island are where sort of your interdimensional beings, that's where they cross over. Nowhere else. You can't just appear from some other universe into Antiford. You appear on Well Island, wherever you came from previously. So a well traveler is somebody who's not from this universe. Doesn't happen a lot, it happens occasionally. Well Island is a terrifying place. Don't go there. Bear Witch came from a completely different world. And Abigail would learn a lot from the Bear Witch. And when the Bear Witch eventually passed away, the Bear Witch gifted Abigail with some interesting things. But we'll get into that. We'll get into that in a second. The word? Yeah. So she would end up taking over an antique store that was formerly run by a gentleman named Arthur Baron Caldwell, and would do some business under his name as a pseudonym. And she would meet her friend Dimitri, who is a wreck of a person. And she would be recruited into the Order of the Badger. And in 1893, she was also involved with the Button incident. She would be a key strategist and the team's chemist. She would poison several individuals, including Gilbert Rothschild, during the masquerade party. So, if you're going to read on Abigail, the story is hidden in memories and books. That's what you're going to read. That goes
Oh, where
to...
did that come from? Where's that picture from?
That picture's from a doodle on Facebook. That's a doodle of the Bear Witch drawn at Halloween time. But she would learn a lot of her chemistry, her herbology, from the Bear Witch. She learned to read her crazy language. And she was gifted the horrible regenerative parasites that keep her ever young and force her to shed all of her skin every so often. It's horrifying. She gets something for giving up something and having nightmares probably forever. Giving us all nightmares though. So Abigail is, one of the players in the Gearford space in the Order of the Badger. She spends a lot of her time in Gearford supplying the illicit substances for the riches parties because of her involvement with the whole prince murdering a lot of people in her family. She sees it as slow killing these horrible people. So let's go across the globe to the other side of the Fimbrian Ocean, over to Ku, northeastern country, where we meet hunter Seth Bishop. Seth Bishop is a very traditionalist Kuvian hunter. Keeps journal, like is taught in the northern regions of Ku. She did spend a lot of time in her younger years traveling the world. She did see some of Antiford's deserts and Peorian mountain ranges and that sort of thing, but she went home and she hunted things that aren't really technically legal to hunt, the old godstag, but she's very traditionalist, doesn't care about the southerners' laws. So she would get into horrible scrapes with a cult known as the Geovicans. Kuvian culture, they worship this deer deity known as Ovendir. And their religious mythology is that Ovendir protects the humans in the afterlife from the horrible monsters. And the Geovicans is a cult of people who worship the horrible monsters. They're very your Lovecraftian cult, kind of. She had some run-ins with Geovican cultists who started weaponizing strange creatures that came from Well Island that they assumed were part of their Geovican pantheon, which is horrifying, terrible, and leads to a lot of nightmare fuel in her life. She meets and loses a best friend in Chase. It's gripping stuff, and there's a lot of really great insight into Kuvian culture. So, but unfortunately, Seth Bishop has gone missing completely. I can only assume the worst, honestly. There's probably horrible things that happened to her. The account that was writing those stories has switched over to being a new character, Maisie Maud. Watch that space. Maisie Maud is a former Geovican tracker. Yeah, she left the cult. So we may learn about Seth Bishop's whereabouts in the new character's stories. Who knows? Maybe we'll just learn some new stories about the whole crazy northern cultists of Ku. Back into the deserts of Antiford. Lieutenant Joel Arnett. Lieutenant is a title he gave himself. If that tells you anything about this smug, young,
That's what I play to see again.
horn dog of the Antifordian desert.
Quite humble, he didn't call himself captain.
Reformed.
So he grew up in the small mining town of Sortitudo on the southern border by the canyon. he moved out of the small town. He wanted a bigger life, so he moved to Argenstrath, which is just south of the capital of Deerford. A little more San Francisco-y, got trolleys and stuff. Big town, big city. Small man in a big city. He works at the landship and airship docks, I believe, and so he gets a lot of mechanical skills there. He becomes good friends with a fruit vendor named Casey, really cool guy, and he would frequent the Badger's Den, a brothel.
Hey, trying to put people through school.
Yes, a brothel staffed by mostly the students trying to go through the medical school. So yes, paying for people's colleges. What a philanthropist! Stand-up guy, Joel Arnett.
One CM at a time.
One CN. Oh. For those who don't know, CNs are the Antifordian currency, the money. So Arnett's life would change massively after meeting a well-worlder himself, Lieutenant Flint. Another character written by the same author who is not an Antiford character. But there's this bit of a torch passing that happens with Lieutenant Flint showing him the ropes and how to be an adventurer and how to be a more stand-up person, and gosh, it gets sad.
How to dress better.
How to dress better, yes. So they built the landship Scorpios, and they go on this grand adventure to get Lieutenant Flint back home, back through the wells. It's crazy, but now Arnett has his own landship. After years of working on landships, he has his own. So he's got a lot of bravado, a lot of confidence. So he goes through and does a lot of adventures, a lot of work with his landship and moving and protecting people in Prush and Antiford. And so he would eventually get into a fight with the Emperor, which is crazy, with Emperor von Kresser.
We started it.
Which blew my mind. I totally forgot that happened. So you're an Emperor fighter, which
Yes.
I don't know if you can return to Prush now, since he's in charge.
There's a story.
Yep.
Good. He continues to work with his landship, and he goes through a lot of shipmates. He's apparently not the easiest guy to work with. Yeah, he goes through a lot of shipmates. So, in 1893, he has surprisingly sexy New Year's.
What the fuck is Sexy New Year?
If you read that New Year's story, he just has a great time. It is a great time for him.
Okay.
Which contrasts with the year following, so...
Oh.
So, from this time period, Rise of the Scorpion. You're gonna read Rise of the Scorpion. If you're gonna read an Arnett story, read Rise of the Scorpion. You know why? It's the only novel-length thing on the website. Oh my god, it takes forever to read, but it's beautiful. Yeah, it takes forever. It involves Brotherhood and Well Island, so you get familiar with things like Well Island and some of the other Brotherhood of Demetrius going on. This one story gets plagiarized by 2 different Spider-Man films.
Oh my god.
Yeah. By Into the Spider-Verse, totally ripped him off. And Endgame? You'll come to it later. Anyway, we'll talk about it later.
I was like, I'll have to.
Because it's spoilers for Rise of the Scorpion if I mention it now. But yeah, there's a lot of really fun stuff. And Phineas.
What you're reading?
Yeah. Okay. So Phineas Cromwell ends up helping Arnett to escape Well Island. This becomes a thing. With Captain Commodore Cromwell rescuing people from Well Island, being like, "You shouldn't be here. Let's leave. I'll help you."
You should just start a cleanup service.
You really should.
Yeah, I know.
You should charge people for that service. So later on, he would go back home and visit his parents in Sortitudo, and it's kind of a "you didn't even write, kiddo" kind of situation. He would participate in the Antiford Grand Prix, this big giant race of landships. There's some cool other landship captains that are really awesome. The landship
Don't even try it.
Nishalak.
He won't tell me either. I don't know if he knows it.
Okay, the landship Enerjet. But
It's a good name, but I never learned to pronounce.
and then he would help the Tidgeway Railway build a pass through the mountains of Mistfell, which would connect the railway from Antiford into Titania. The landship Scorpios would blast that hole through the mountains for the railroad.
He ruined some guy's day.
Oh, he totally ruined that poor Titanian farmer's day because the new railroad pass just dumps out right onto somebody's farm, and they're just gonna have to move. But it was a good thing, and he was involved in connecting the countries, which is great. So the ship gets massively upgraded due to some work with Dainty Fuel, I believe, and then spoilers, but he loses another shipmate because
The best one.
he can't. Yeah, the best one. No, it's second best one at this point. So New Year's '94 is decidedly unsexy, unlike '93. And apparently Miss Cormac comes to yell at him for like, "Hey, stop looking into the Brotherhood. How dare you? Like, stop it! You're getting in trouble." That happens. Read it. And then he does a whole bunch of solo adventures at this point. Then we have the story that's in the Antiford adventure book, the Badger's Challenge. He participates in a high-stakes competition, like competitive heist, for underground madman, well-known fashion designer Tulio Bassett,
Yeah, he forgot to.
which is madness. I mean, it is really like Mad World.
Rat race.
Rat race,
Yeah, it's very-
trains, planes, aeroplanes, magnificent other flying machines, like that sort of story. That's what the Badger Challenge is. Craziness. And he meets the wonderful, eventually he'll meet the wonderful Owl Alexander.
Well, that's true. He is a
Yeah,
good guy,
the owl is fantastic.
too. I like these all the time.
And then he realizes, after meeting this owl, that he really should like have partners in his work again, because it's nice having someone to talk to other than himself and his ship. So he puts out a wanted ad, and it's an interactive fiction story where you get to go through the interviews, and the author had us vote on who would be the new crewmate, which was really, really cool and fun. So the winner of this was Nina Tovic of Vibrani, Pavasani lady. They have a lot of A+ stellar adventures together. I'm not going to spoil the details, but like, that's not even the point. The point is that like the stories are really fun. They work well together because she doesn't take crap from Arnett, who has a lot of crap to give, so it's hilarious. So, we're going to switch over to this author's, our Nate's other character, Detective Kent Nicholas. Kent Nicholas is your... he starts off pretty bright, wide-eyed, but he becomes your jaded, noir-ish like detective eventually. It's fun. He starts off working as a toll collector in Argotstrath, and in about 1880-ish, so before even the Revolution, his curiosity led him to working on a case known as the case of the Glassless Garden. Amazing, crazy time. So he then becomes a private detective, like an officially licensed royal detective sort of thing, after this, because it was great work. He enjoyed it. He did very, very well. So much later, he worked... So it's obvious that he's been doing a lot of cases since. But because of the political climate, due to a whole bunch of the Button incident, basically, the Button incident made the technocracy, the government, crack down and raid people and pull people into line, and they wanted to get rid of the whole concept of the private detectives that were like officially licensed to practice and this and that. They wanted to pull everyone into the police. And he was like, I don't want to be part of the police. I'm not a police officer. And so he tried to leave the country once, didn't work out so well. They're like, why are you trying to leave the country? And then he tries again with his friend Stempleton telling him, you gotta leave. He eventually leaves, goes around the world, has a terrible time in coup, and so with probably some cultists. And so he decides he has to go home again because of the psychological damage, I'm sure. So, and he returns back, and he starts to work with his buddy Stempleton again, solving cases. You're gonna read Glassless Garden. While it was being produced in a like almost weekly serialized fashion, where we were on the edge of our seat. Oh, what's gonna happen this week? Oh, what's gonna happen this week? Fantastic, just suspenseful. It's a great mystery. It's a really good mystery. Like I just was always guessing, and I really like how it ends. And it's a very easy story to recommend, so a lot of us do. It's not too long, it's not too short, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on. So then we have the Archivist, Astrid Westergaard. So she grew up in Titania, in the capital, Shem, and she would often travel to Argenstrath in Antiford because of the medical facilities are just really, really good in Argenstrath, and her mother was sick. So growing up, she eventually gets a pet moon bear, moon-faced cave bear, as a pet. She just had this massive bear as a pet, named Arton.
To be fair, he's a rodent, so he's only slightly nice.
She would
It's like regular bear size.
she would apprentice at the Titanian National Archives. She'd get a lot of skills. She would eventually move to Argenstrath, kind of more on a permanent basis. For reasons. Yeah, and oh, sorry, don't want to skip ahead. She got engaged. She was betrothed as a young lady. She would eventually get engaged to her betrothed, and then her betrothed would go off onto some expedition somewhere and then get killed. And so she was left like kind of widowed, but like she couldn't get her name officially changed, and it was a whole thing, and it's really sweet in the end. But so because of all that, she's like, I can't deal with Titania right now. I'm gonna live in Antiford, which is what you do when you give up in life, apparently. Yeah. According to all of our authors. Yeah, you go to the worst place ever. So she would work as Detective Grimwald's secretary for quite a while, and she got heavily involved in a case involving the Dunkerun, which are a mafia based, whose origins come from the country of Nixiana, which are kind of Irish. So she got a little too involved with the Dunkerun, and it was an interesting, well, I'll get into that. But so eventually she stops working for Grimwald. You know, she's had enough of working on these cases and wants to do other things. So she would work at the Argenstrath Medical College as a kind of librarian, archivist sort of thing, using her skills she learned. And in 1897, Grimwald would give up working for the department after years of being gruff and grumpy
Yes, that's final resignation.
and upset. So the changing of the prime minister and things happening due to that, he'd just be like, I'm done, guys. I've had enough, plenty of years of working. I'm gonna go write my books. He's gonna be writing the book on forensic science in Antiford, and he's like, hey, you're really good at pulling notes together, and I'm terrible at it. Will you help me, Astrid? And so that's kind of where she's at that time. So if you're gonna read something, read Woman on the Platform. The Woman on the Platform is great though, and again, it's another really good mystery. There's a lot of think about family. Family. All right. So there's a lot about loyalty, and so the mob bosses, the head guy would die and pass the business on one of his sons, and there's a whole bunch of drama that's involved in that. It's fantastic. So yes, Astrid works for Grimwald, giving sass, tea, and major observational skills. Mostly sass. See those sassy guys up there? Oh my god. There we go. So then we get to the industrialist, Lucas Meriwether Buford. A little too much history, sorry. His story really starts when he, as a young lad, would escape the madness of the revolution in Gearford to the quieter life in Aston Junction, which Aston was a much smaller town at that point. They would get built up over time. He would work at a local garage for Miss Bittersworth, and he built his first kind of robot assistance, improved his prosthetic arm that was required after his original arm got lopped off in the revolution, he would work and learn a lot of things. And he would eventually start a company with mechanical dolls called Auto Marie. And he would apprentice under a gentleman named Lars Attridge, who was very, very involved with and interested in humanoid automatons, sort of the robotics of the Antiford world. Now, Lars would be murdered, and Lars was was one of the original members of the Order of the Badger. And so Lars would instruct his other partners to then recruit Lucas into the Order of the Badger. He felt like it was time, and he unfortunately didn't get to live to see it, but... So, Lucas is now part of the Order of the Badger. Now, Lucas's wife would eventually fall ill to family illness, and Buford would enlist the help of a tea merchant named Bert van Wall, because one of Bert van Wall's teas really, really helped her condition. And he's like, I need more of that tea. And there'd be a big adventure, but unfortunately his wife did die. Not long after, he would eventually found the Buford Automaton Company. He would really perfect the technology and start selling to big industries, big factories. Hey, there's a job that's too hard for a person to do or too dangerous to want a person to do. Have a machine do it instead. Tell it, move 30 paces this way and pick up a thing and move it through this dangerous, molten glass area instead of a person. Yeah, he would have some success. The company would build very, very slowly. He would be eventually invited to a few different scientific things to go check out Barrow Camp, a scientific outpost where, if you remember, Phineas Cromwell found they were building giant military airships, but he would never make it to Barrow Camp. He would unfortunately get halfway and have a whole horrible adventure with his airship crashing. From this period, Auto Marie is good. Early Lucas Buford story. It's a little bit of romance. It's cute. It's fun. It's a good, effective origin story for the character. So in 1893, he would be bullied by the technocracy, and his technology would be stolen by Charles Button. Lucas would then hire Captain Leo Swift to take care of, to remove, to send Charles Button somewhere else. Lucas didn't know that Charles Button was part of the secret technocracy council. This would be a horrible, horrible mistake. So Buford is responsible for the Charles Button incident, just hands down. Oops, I accidentally country leader. Yes. So he lies low in Coup for a while. He opens up company offices over in Coup. He would get messed up with some Gayovican cultists, and he would hire the crew of the Gazelle to help him out, figure out what's going on. So he would eventually return to Antiford after some heat died down, like a lot of us do. He would be involved with the 1894 World's Fair. 1894 World's Fair? Yes, the 1894 World's Fair. And he would now, his company has competition. Ceruleus Industries is building automatons, more wooden, more just different, and a bit cheaper too. So it's good. He has some competition. He, in 1895, signs a deal with then, I don't know, terrorists? former Emperor von Kresser to help his war effort reclaiming his country. Buford made probably too much money off of that. Maybe not so proud of it, but it did get the company through some hard financial times. Buford would eventually date again, go on some adventures with Phineas Cromwell. He would have to retire his original automaton, Bob. From this time, I recommend Death of Monopoly. It's a good story. You know, you really see Buford and how he feels about his robots, kind of treating them like children. There's some good drama. It happens up in Titania. I like it. More recently, in 1897, he would be part of the diplomatic envoy to the Prussian Empire. The Prime Minister Marigold said, "Hey, you are too involved in this war. You're going to come down with me to go and talk with the Emperor and hash out some diplomatic things we want, like an embassy, re-signing of peace treaties, etc." Kind of got strong-armed into that, but it's his own fault. Fun. Captain Leo Swift is also involved in that story. It's an interesting time. In 1899, Buford's automaton would finally be part of the International Automaton Conference. There's a lot of international hate for Buford for being the first one to actually commercialize. Before it was kind of an academic thing, the study of automatons, and they really didn't like him for selling out sort of thing. So it's a big deal that he eventually did show up at this big conference of technology. And then he would decide at that point during that conference and announced at that conference that he would open up the secret journals of Andrea Moreau and some of the other folks who were doing early automaton work. Lars Atras and his line of scientists would have had hoarded some of this knowledge for various reasons, and he decided that wasn't going to fly anymore. So in 1900, he opened BIT, the Buford Institute of Technology. And I think at some point he's also going to be building a small town in Prush with some lands he was paid, called Buford'sburg.
Is it going to be a company town?
No, it's going to be horrible. It's going to be like
It's going to be Disneyland?
it's going to be
Better.
Disneyland.
The
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
Company town.
So, really cool resident of Gearford, librarian Theodore Beam. I love when people pick really just fun little, like, what we would normally consider kind of like simple jobs in a fantastical world. Those stories are so much more interesting. They're so great. Theodore Beam, he was an excitable young Gearford lad who, at a young age, broke his legs trying to fly with wings he built. Early adventurer spirit, but that held him back a little bit. He would eventually meet an old war captain who would encourage him and have him show him his first airship. And so Theodore would work at the Gearford Library of Science and Technology, I believe. He would hire some of the ruffians from the town to bring him materials to build an airship inside of his house. And he did get all the permits. He would blow the roof off of his house and launch this airship in the middle of the kind of poorer sections of Gearford. Hilarious. And then he goes off on crazy adventures. He would attend a librarian conference where he would have adventures with Astrid Westergaard and both of their pets, his pet Captain Fox, a cat, and Astrid's bear, Martin. Crazy hilarious. And yeah, so 1897 was when he finally launches the ship, kind of the same Prime Minister era. And he would eventually pick up a adventuring partner, Valerie, or Val, who's a Vibrani. Cool stuff. I recommend The Mystery of Fox Hollow. It is the collaboration with Astrid Westergaard. There's a lot of cool, intriguing things about the old families of Antiford, the old royalty, and some of their artifacts and stuff. Really cool, and the best animal hijinks around. Highly recommend. So then we have our technocrat, our villain, our government official, who is slimy and great and is awesome. So he would be born pretty wealthy into the Mistfell family. They ran the paper mills up there in Misfeld. That's kind of on the border of Antiford and Prush. And huh?
And Titania.
Titania.
Oh, sorry.
You said up, please.
I was distracted. Sorry, Misfeld's on the border of Antiford and Titania and the Hogramar, just south, just like the southern area of the Hogramar Mountains. But yeah, so he would be strongly involved with the plot of the House of Engineers to overthrow the rest of the government, the 1883 revolution. So it's strongly suspected that Gilbert Rothschild is involved with the actual assassination of the king, known as the Masks of Scret. It's suspected, not confirmed. But post-revolution, he would have a big say about a lot of different things. He would do a lot of work from the Royal Academy and be pretty known for a lot of the work he did there. During the Charles Button incident, he would be at the table that was poisoned by Miss Cormac. So he would spend a little time recovering from that. And then in 1897, the horse he was backing, Marigold, becomes this official public figure, the Prime Minister of Antiford, and he would thrive, and he would be anointed the Progress Committees are, like the guy who's in charge of a lot of the new public works, and yeah, so I'm sure he got up to some nefarious stuff there. So we don't know what he's up to now. But moving on to someone who's a little less high and mighty is a small individual, the messenger, Annabelle Bardinen. Her story is wonderful. She works as a factory worker as a small child. Her family would be exiled for backing some movements in Antiford towards a democracy that happened before the revolution happened, and the democratic Antiford movement would get crushed to like crazy amounts after the revolution and the technocrats took place. Yeah, they were exiled. Their family was exiled. Now she eventually came back and would work as a courier for the brawny lady who didn't want to have to be harassed when she went out and did her errands. So she hired this young girl, Annabelle, to do her errands for her. Arrest Record is probably one of the nicest stories for getting yourself back into the mindset of what Antiford is like for a normal person. I strongly recommend it, like, as just a refresher of like, oh yeah, that's right, these things, those things. She makes a lot of references to a lot of different things. You know, her character religiously reads the comic book, The Glass Octopus. Her brother works for the railroad. Like, there's a lot of really, really great stuff in there. So, the Baron of Argenstraff, Nestor Delgado, you couldn't get back to further from layperson. He was like one of the royalty who actually got to keep their lives and kind of positions, because he supported the war effort and he helped rebuild the town, his establishment, his money, helped rebuild the town after a lot of the revolution and the war and this and that. So he grew up kind of on board an airship, learning stuff, kind of out and about while flying. He trained under the Black Sleeves, kind of secretive, semi-military security force, but he never joined them. His family maintained and helped build a lot of the giant airships that fought the war, including the Arbiter. And the technocracy, yeah, they promoted him instead of exiling him. And his lover's ship, the Manticore, would be lost during the war. They would eventually find it, but not without some struggles. He did a lot of well traveling for a while, and he contracted a disease that really disfigured him. So, to fight this disease, he grabbed his old professor from the airship and a well-known kind of biologist named Dr. Thias to help them find a cure for his horrible, disfiguring disease. So he was nearly killed by Dr. Thias, who turned out to be a maniacal, horrible, evil genius. So he found himself cured, but he was disfigured, he'd have to live with a breathing mask for his life. He had some strange visual things that were changed about him. So he eventually donned a mask and kind of an appearance more fox-like to cover up a lot of the things. Now, he would send the Arbiter to go and look for the Manticore. They would find it in Titania. Crazy, weird hijinks with Geovicans would happen. Great. He would eventually hire Buford to help him with his breathing apparatus for a little bit. They would find out what happened with a lot of the airships that they lost. The Black Sleeves would eventually find Dr. Thias in the sewer systems of Argenstrath doing crazy experiments. Not uncommon in Antiford, apparently. A few different things happened in the sewers. And in 1894, he would kind of get back to the restoration projects. So he was done with some of his personal projects about finding people he'd lost. So he would hire Leo Swift to go and retrieve an old artifact from the Prussian Empire, and a few other old relics that the old royals had. And so Leo Swift would do some work for him. In 1897, he would attend a royal ball where the new prime minister would kind of harass him. The new prime minister didn't really like the whole "I'm still old royal blood." Okay. But the technocracy would eventually just give him a heck of a hard time. So, if you're gonna read something, read The Manticore. It's a very emotional story, lost lovers, really cool characters. I like Samantha, I like Grum. And yeah, Geovicans outside of Ku doing weird stuff, that's an interesting story. Okay. I still don't know 100% what they're doing out there, but it kind of brings them up as a more global problem. So, I think we're gonna have to take a break. There's not too much left, but I think we all need a break. I don't know. What do y'all think? There's 2 or 3 more. So.
Oh, then we might as well. Unless you're worried about Wallach missing it. It's like we might as well just
You want to just press
go
on?
through it. Yeah.
Alright, well let's just press on. We'll just finish up. Alright, so Captain Alexander Nolan and his partner Rillin and his pet Squigglebottom. Nolan was found amnesiac in the desert. His ship crashed, and he didn't remember much except he had his pet land octopus Squigglebottom. So he would grow up with some foster parents, the Nolans. He bought an airship called the Gazelle that used to be owned by a biologist. So there's a lot of cages which did their bounty hunting work, a lot of good. He actually met Rillin because he had her bounty, because she was an indentured servant or something of the sort, and she escaped. And so when he found her, she explained this to him, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not gonna take your bounty in. Come hang out with me," which is great. Franklin convinced him to take her on. And this happens a lot. He believes he can talk to his land octopus, so he talks with his pet, thinking that he's actually saying things. Interesting, mad, fun, hilarious. Now Captain Nolan, interestingly, he wouldn't be one for money. He got plenty of money for his bounty hunting work, but he's also the author of the famous comic, The Glass Octopus. He's the author. That's hilarious.
Who is?
Captain Nolan. Yep. Now he would visit Ku and eventually find that he has family there. He would find his birth family, and they're pretty well off too. There we go. You're gonna read something from this time. The Gazelle set sail. It's 3 small stories that kind of lead into each other. They give a nice overview of the characters and who they are, and it's fun. And it introduces us to the city-state of Conwell, which is where they live. It's a country that lives on the border between Antiford and Prush, over the canyon, and into the canyon. So he would help rescue Commodore Cromwell from Barrow Camp after the North Star was destroyed, and then he went back and forth between coup. He would get invited to the Queen's ball and accidentally dance with the Queen. He would be hired by Lucas Buford to hunt down some Gaovicans, and he actually got a lot of notoriety in coup because of that. Like, people were going missing at their jobs, and then he took down the bad guys. So he was this hero, and he hated it. He hated being a hero. He was grumpy about it. So he fell in love with a girl named Vera, and he spent a good year in the hospital because of some injuries. And after that year in Heimskog, in the hospital, being a hero, he couldn't take it anymore. He basically, he just takes his friend Vera on the ship and his crew, and he blows up some things, becomes not a hero anymore, and leaves coup. He's done. So, Captain Swift. Captain Leo Swift of the Caleb Novice. Leo MFing Swift. He is a bombastic individual. He lived in a small town, hidden town in the Hoganmar Range. He grew up with some talent. He almost was interested in going to the military, but he was convinced to go and register for the bounty hunting program instead. A little bit more freedom, a little bit more adventure, he thought, at least. He did eventually work some military stuff later on, but so he did that. He went bounty hunting. He got his own crew, his own airship, Caleb Novice. There would be a photojournalist from the newspaper The Ticking Clock who would join them and chronicle about a dozen of their adventures. This would get them some notoriety in Antiford as like this big hero crew. In 1893, Mr. Buford would hire him to take care of an individual named Charles Button. It goes badly. It goes particularly badly for Captain Leo Swift, who would actually be the one to shank, murder, almost crucify Charles Button. He had a whole bunch of problems. He discovered his photographer friend was going to rat them out, so he threatened, blackmailed, and kicked him off. He got some weird injuries from Well Island plants. Crazy stuff. So, I'd read Masquerade Mayhem for this period of time. It's a great story that involves a whole bunch of characters. It's our first big collab, first major event. Leo meets a lot of characters, including some that would follow on in his stories and some of the characters that other people wrote. So in 1894, he would do his mission for the Baron, Mr. Delgado. That's where he would meet the Emperor von Kresser, which he got a nice working relationship eventually. So he would fight in von Kresser's Air Force for quite a while. And then in 1897, he would be coerced into being part of the political, diplomatic negotiations with Prussia. Of the newer stories of Leo Swift, Mission for the Baron is great. It's adventurous, it's fun, it's a little bit better written, it's more, the character's more mature, and the authors knows what they want to do a little bit more. It's action-packed, it's full, it's great. So, where is everyone now? Well, the Emperor is rebuilding his country. The Commodore is still doing all these different missions for these secret orders. Abigail's stealing gear for slowly poisoning with drugs rich people. Seth Bishop's probably dead. Arnett is going to be involved shortly with some crazy shenanigans known as the Judgment Arc. I look forward to that. Kent Nicholas is presumed to still be doing some mysteries, some detective work with his friend Stempleton, but who knows? He could have been shot by now. Not sure yet. I think Astrid's probably still working on Grimwald's books.
Well, the match was never really happening.
As I said, Buford's maybe going to build a town, but he's kind of involved with his school right now. Theodore Beam is flying around with his friend Val. Our Wrathchild technocrat is kind of mysteriously missing as of the turn of the century. Nobody knows where he's been after all this work. Interesting. Annabelle's still just working hard, getting by in Hereford. The Baron is dealing with the technocrats not liking him. Captain Nolan's probably just still getting drunk in Conwell, feeling sorry for himself, even though he's a rich bastard.
Isn't he like pseudo the sheriff or whatever of Conwell?
He's one of
the law
one of the law
keepers.
keepers.
Yeah.
There are 5 law keepers, and he's one of them.
And he doesn't want to be.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm that guy, but he's
It's
totally
more
that guy.
paying for his booze, so.
Yeah.
Right.
And Captain Swift, Captain Swift may still be in Prush after the events of the diplomatic missions led him to being thrown off of the SS Charles Button into some fog. So, who knows where he's at, to be
There's
honest.
already an SS Charles Button.
Yeah, that's one of the big ships.
It's like, they did that fast.
Yeah. Yeah, Tim.
Well, they renamed
Yeah. So,
ships.
So that's the century. And it's also the group's 10th year anniversary. Very excited to move forward with what do we want to do next. So Antiford is to be continued. There's going to be more crazy stuff going on. And yeah, so that's the presentation. And I guess we're going to workshop. Take a little break and figure out what everyone wants to do with their characters, how we can collaborate, how we can help each other, work on stuff. Like, what does everyone want to do? That's the whole goal of today, is figuring out how we can all help each other get some new stuff done. So, thanks.